watch over it, as it were, but it is a company that is running, a private company running this loan company on behalf of the government. And so no political party, I'm afraid, can put their hand on their heart and say they're going to get it right.
Okay, thank you. I want to move on to the next question, because obviously we've got quite a few issues to raise. And the next question is from Laura Barton from Rugby High School. Laura.
Does the candidate going to change the increasing pay to ensure MPs understand what they're allowed to claim for on expenses?
Okay, thank you. So this is reference to the expenses scandal. Obviously none of the panel are sitting MPs, so they're not going to be able to talk about their own experiences, but in the future. Mark Pawsey, do you think enough changes, if changes have been put in place to ensure MPs understand what they're allowed to claim for as expenses?
Frankly, if MPs didn't get it, you know, in the last year, I think most of them get it now. And it's interesting that there's quite an exodus from the House of Commons of MPs who have decided that for whatever reason they don't want to remain under the new regime. So there will be a new regime, and you know, there's a new report. Kelly, I think, is bringing out proposals for how our MPs' expenses should work. Frankly, I've come from a private business background, and even though I own the business, had to prepare my own monthly expenses, claim it back from my business, and have it all in a format that could be scrutinised by the Inland Revenue. It came to me, as I'm sure as it came to most of you, to find that MPs weren't subject to that kind of regime and that kind of discipline in the management of their own affairs. I expect they will be in future. If I'm successful in being elected, I'm perfectly happy to do it. I've done it throughout my entire working career, and I think you know, we will have a sensible, clear set of rules that people will understand. And frankly, we can then get on with dealing with the very serious issues affecting our country, the state of our economy, which one of your questions raised earlier, and not get bogged down in which MP did what.
Yeah, I think it's a case of getting bogged down in which MP did what, but it's clearly a big issue for people because you know, it hasn't helped the reputation of MPs. What do you think needs to happen to improve the reputation of politicians in this country because of this scandal?
Yeah, I think that in many respects, David Cameron, I may say, has led the way on this. He was the first leader to insist that MPs made available details of their staff. He has said that there won't be a final salary pension scheme for MPs. He was the first to insist that ministers publish their online expenses. It's all about transparency, and I have to say there is a real difference between the parties here, because as all of this was unfolding, Gordon Brown simply failed to take the necessary action, and it was left to David Cameron to set the way forward, which Gordon Brown subsequently followed. It's not difficult, you know. I've worked under that kind of regime before. Every MP should work under that regime. I don't see there's a problem moving forward.
Okay, Alan Scotland, what would be your view on this matter?
I don't think the MPs will be able to come to terms as quickly as we think with the new regime. It will take some time.
Half of them will be new, they'll have to work with the new system.
And so therefore there will be some complications. However, I think if we paid our MPs properly, and have a proper system robust in place, we'd have less of these problems that we're facing. And if we stop taking our facts from the media, we might have a more sound assessment of what's really going on in our housing department.
What do you think would be a reasonable wage for an MP that isn't in government?
I think at least double what they're receiving now for the work that they're doing. They're ruling our country. If you give them peanuts, we'll get monkeys.
So you think about £120,000 a year for an MP? Currently MPs receive over £60,000, so you're advocating £120,000.
Compared with other nations.
Okay.
Chairman, may I ask who in this room would support that proposal?
Andy King, I want to bring you in on this, because Mark Pawsey said Gordon Brown didn't lead the way, that David Cameron was sort of the person who led the way on this. Do you think the Labour Party is, that the MPs in the Labour Party are going to be ready when the new regime comes in?
Well, I don't accept, of course, the original premise that David Cameron led the way on this.
Yes.
And I think that the people in this room need to make up their own minds and do their own research into how this whole matter actually unfolded and the steps which were taken, you know, from when it first came to light.
Gordon Brown tried to exempt MPs from
we
freedom
just
of information.
Andy didn't interrupt you, Mark.
Now, the main point is this. There has to be a very robust scheme of ensuring that claims that are made are legitimate.
But what would be more robust, what Alan Scott's proposing is you don't need a system. You pay an MP a decent wage. You don't need a system for claiming expenses.
So, I mean, apart from the figures that Alan has stated, I agree that that principle is absolutely right. You pay the proper rate for the job, and you keep expenses and all the rest of it to an absolute minimum, so that you avoid having to, these situations where people are trying to claim all sorts of ridiculous things, or are perceived to claim things which are not legitimate at all. It's actually running a second home away from the constituents. So yes, I do believe that things went wrong. I don't understand how they managed to go so wrong, because it was always my experience that the Fuse Office were quite vigilant in what they were doing. So heaven knows what has happened in the course of the last 5 or 6 years, where people were claiming for boats and duck houses and mortgages which didn't exist. It's just, it's beyond belief. But what has happened in the course of the last year, with the Daily Telegraph's exposés, is that it sadly has left Parliament and the democracy that we live in even more damaged, because people have become more and more cynical about the motivation and the actions of their elected representatives. And that's a very sad state of affairs. I want to see democracy cleaned up, I want to see Parliament cleaned up, and I want us to have confidence in the people who we elect to act on behalf of the whole of the community that they're elected to serve.
Okay, thank you. Sue, what would be your opinion on this? Do you think enough changes are going to be put in place to ensure people sort of have more faith in their MPs?
Well, I hope so, but I also tend to agree that a better system would be to pay our MPs a proper wage for the job. It is difficult to get the right people to become members of Parliament. They can earn far more, in many cases, in the private sector. And so consequently, a lot of people some of the better people don't put themselves forward, because they simply would lose out by going into Parliament. And that is simply not right. It shouldn't be right. We should pay people the right price for the job that they're doing. And it is a hard job.
Would you extend that to other professions such as teachers and nurses? Because nursing, I think
I'm a teacher, so I know exactly what it's like. But
I think that
there is no way, I'm a teacher, I'm a local councillor, there is no way that I would ever want to be an MP, because the impact on your personal life, the impact on your job, if you are only in for a short while and you've then got to get back into the job market if you lose your seat at the next election, you have to. Some of the MPs are having to travel from constituencies that are 200, 300 miles away. You've got to have a place to live in London, away from your families. I do not think that MPs should be able to claim for food, and they should not be able to claim for their travel within London, or if they are within travelling distance of London. But if you've got to live there, then you need to be paid the right amount of money to enable you to live there and to do the job. You've got to be working in your constituency, you are working till late in the night, you are reading papers, you are working incredible hours. I don't